Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Tom Marioni.
Thank you, Julia, for inviting me to be in this drawing show. I'm the guy that did the yellow drawing in the other room. And I was talking to Gerd earlier, and he told me his painting was in storage for 40 years, and the same with my yellow drawing that I did here in this museum 40 years ago in performance that's in the drawing show now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that takes 15 minutes. I'm going to give you a little art history lesson, tell a couple of jokes, and then I'm going to demonstrate my 1-second sculpture, and I'm going to explain what it is and what you can expect at the time. And you have to pay attention because it only lasts for 1 second. So, yeah. And I've got some notes here so to remind me what I'm going to say. I have a theory that in the 7th year of every decade, the next decade is predicted. For instance, Picasso invented Cubism in 1907, which was the art of the next decade. And then in 1917, Marcel Duchamp exhibited his famous work called Fountain, which was a urinal, and that was the beginning of the Dada period in art. And then in 1927, Thomas Hart Benton established the regionalism movement in this country, and it was also about the time that Surrealism happened in Europe at that same time. In 1937 was when President Roosevelt established the WPA, the Works Project, and it was the beginning of the social realism. In 1947, Jackson Pollock did his first abstract drip paintings, and that was the beginning of abstract expressionist painting, which was the painting of the 50s. And then in 1957, Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg did the first pop art, the Leo Castelli Gallery in New York, and that predicted the art of the 60s. And then 1967, Saul LeWitt wrote a manifesto which was called Sentences on Conceptual Art, and that was the beginning. That's the official beginning of the movement of conceptual art, that what became the art of the 1970s. Then in 1977, Julian Schnabel did his broken plate paintings, which was like symbolic of breaking from the past, because painting was dead in the 70s, because in the 70s art was about philosophy and poetry and so on. It was a conceptual art period. And so that was the return of painting in 1977. 1987, Jeff Koons became a neo-pop artist. And that was the art of the 90s. 1977, a Belgian artist and a Russian artist claimed to be the inventors of internet art, which was known as net art, and that was the art of the first decade of this century. And in 2007, I had a show of all circle drawings in a gallery in San Francisco, and I invented circleism 100 years after Picasso invented Cubism. Sometimes people ask me, what do I do? And I say, I make psychic sculpture. And they say, what is that? And I say, it'll come to you. How many believe in telekinesis? Raise my hand. You'll notice in a little while that the light in this room will gradually start to turn yellow. Because it's a signature color with me. You'll see that. So, at 3, I was a child prodigy. At 3, I drew a perfect circle. And then at 4, I painted like Picasso. And at 5, I understood Duchamp. And at 5:30, I went down to the bar and had a cigar and a whiskey. This artist goes to a Buddhist hot dog stand, and he says, make me one with everything, Then he gives the guy a $20 bill, and he says, where's my change? And the guy says, change comes from within. This artist comes home, and he sees that his house has been burned down. And he asks the fireman, what happened? And the fireman says, well, the museum director came to your house, murdered your family, and burned your house down. And the artist says, you mean the museum director came to my house? Sorry, Larry. So there's a bar, I live in San Francisco. There's a bar in San Francisco called Original Joe's, founded the year I was born, 1937. Anyway, I know I don't look it. Anyway, so I'm having lunch in there with some of my friends, and Bill Clinton, this was a few years ago, Bill Clinton is in the same restaurant in the back. It's a very great Italian restaurant in North Beach of San Francisco. So he's in there with some people, you know. So I go up to him and I introduce myself to him and I say, you'd do me a big favor if when you leave, you'd come up to my table and say hello to me, you know. And I could really impress my friends. So he says, okay. So I go back and I'm finishing my lunch with my friends, and then Bill Clinton starts to walk out, and he comes right up to my table and he says, hello, Tom. And I said, not now, Bill. Can't you see I'm eating? So, in the 80s, I went to China and Japan several times. I got a grant to travel in Japan, and I went to China and did some woodblock prints. And anyway, so I learned to write. I had a Chinese teacher. I learned to write Chinese calligraphy, and I discovered that when you write in Chinese, most of the time it defines the word. If you write music, it's two characters. It's one for sound and one for harmony. That's how you write music in Chinese. And if you want to write art, it's beauty and skill. It's two characters, and it defines. So the beauty is like that, you know, graceful like that, and skill is really rigid like that. And I see it as like a male and female, like the male and dancing with the female. The skill is dancing with beauty, like that. So that's how I interpret it as a Westerner, you know. And speaking of Chinese, this Chinese couple is in bed. And the husband says, can we do 69 tonight? And the wife says, you want beef and broccoli now? Is this an audience or an oil painting? Okay. All right, we're coming to the end here. All right, this is a thing in this is a cartoon I saw in the New Yorker. I have to describe it to you because it's very visual. There's four guys there, and it says Afghanistan Terrorist School, and there's a sign that says Human Bomb Class, and then the teacher. He saw, there are these four guys, they're Muslim terrorists. Not that there's anything wrong with that. He's holding up a detonator, and he's got a dynamite strapped to his waist, and he says, pay attention, because I'm only going to do this once. Yeah. Okay, now this is something serious before I describe the 1 second sculpture, you know. This is something I wrote in 1999 for a show at the Oakland Museum called What is Art For? For beauty, for history, for decorating apartments, for people to laugh at, for imitating nature, for therapy, for seeing in a new way, for an educated audience, for enlightenment, for political agendas, for glorifying the church in the Renaissance, for glorifying the state in communism, for glorifying the rich in capitalism, for recording society in a poetic way. So that's my serious part, yeah. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate a work I did in 1969, which was half a century ago, almost, except for 1 year, and it's called 1 second sculpture. And what it is, it's what's referred to today as sculpture-based performance, which comes out of Joseph Beuys, the German artist who really invented the idea of performance that was sculpture-based, you know, about sculpture sensibility. And I'm a sculptor and a graphic artist too, you know. All sculptors are graphic artists too, you know, like architects are all graphic artists, you know. Anyway, so this is the case for the instrument. So it's an instrument that makes a sound. So, and it's made of a metal tape measure that I took apart. So a tape measure is normally used to measure space, but I also use it's the same thing to measure time, because it makes a sound for 1 second. when it's opening itself up in the air, it makes a drawing in space, an abstract drawing, calligraphic drawing, and then it falls to the ground as a straight line. And I might be taking the mystery away from it by over-explaining it, but just so you, because it happens very fast, so you have to know what you're seeing. So I'm going to do that now. See if I forgot anything about it. Measure spaces, sound and image. Yeah, okay. And it turns out that it was very prophetic for my work because it has all these elements in it. It has drawing, it has sound, and I was also known as a sound artist in the 70s and performance artist. But I see the world from the point of view of a sculptor, like in 3 dimensions, Anyway. So it went from a circle to an abstract drawing to a straight line. It went through that transformation and it made a sound all in that 1 second. So, yeah, thank you very much. In the bookstore, I have 3 books. Here's 2 of them. There's a memoir, Beer, Art, and Philosophy, which I'm mostly known for, and writing.